In an effort to sow distrust in our election system and evidently to prove Vice President Harris's point that Trump's campaign is a sad and stale version of the last one, Marjorie Taylor Greene decides to lie yet again about the accuracy of the Dominion voting system. My name is Dina Doll with the MeidasTouch Network. Let's break this down. Now, as we know, in 2020, many comments were made about the Dominion and Smartmatic machines. This was a central crux of Trump's argument that the election was stolen, that Biden didn't really win. But of course, there were no facts around this. And this is why Fox had to pay almost $1 billion for their part in publishing the lies about Dominion. But Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't bothered by this, evidently. And this is what she says in her interview with Alex Jones.
Someone posted up that when they went to vote in Whitfield County here in Georgia's 14th district, now remember, we're a swing state and we need everyone to vote in my district. And so they went to vote and we have the Dominion machines. And you go through and you mark president, you mark, for Congress, that would be me. They marked Donald Trump and they marked who they were voting for the rest of the way down their ballot on the machine. Then when they're finished, the machine prints their ballot, a paper copy, a printed copy, and each voter has to review that printed copy to make sure that it has selected the candidates that they want to vote for. And so when this voter printed their ballot and they looked, it had changed. It was not Donald Trump. It was not me. And it was not the other ones they had voted for. It had switched. And so they went up to one of the election workers and they said, here's the problem. The machine switched it and my printed ballot, I did not vote for these people. So they had to start over and they went through it several times and it kept on making the same error, kept on switching the votes. And so this is something we're just starting to look into today because I just found out about it this morning before I came on your show today. But we will be following up and I'll be talking to election workers and officials here in the district and making sure that this happens, that these ballots are correct, because that's extremely concerning. It sounds similar to what we heard in 2020, but there's other things that I'm concerned about, Alex. Here in Georgia, we fixed our voting laws, but states that did not fix their voting laws is Pennsylvania, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, extremely important swing states. They never fixed their election laws after 2020. And then you add on to that the amount of concerns that we have about people being sent emails overseas, telling them how to obtain an absentee ballot and telling them how to send it in by email, literally sending it in electronically, how to vote in our elections from overseas. The list goes on and on and on. And then you add on the number of illegal aliens that we are concerned voting in our elections. There's a good reason why people are skeptical.
Let's break down what she said in that interview, what her liability may be for what she said in that interview, and again, reiterate what the liability was for Fox and Newsmax for what they said about the voting machines back in 2020. Now, if you notice in her interview, she said that she gets this information from a social media post. This is bad on a few levels. One, it's bad for her in terms of negligent liability, and it's also bad for her as a elected official. And the reason why is because we all know anybody couldn't say anything on social media. Anybody can post anything. This is not actually information that has been vetted in any way. You have no reason to rely on this information. So it's not going to help her in court that she happened to read a random social media post and believed it so much that she then went and told that story on an interview and publicized it further. She has a responsibility to look into that information before she starts publicizing it. One, because she has an awareness that lies about the Dominion machine are false. And she has that awareness because they have already litigated this issue quite a bit in 2020. The idea that these machines were changing people's votes was exactly the claim that was made in 2020. And Newsmax had to pay a settlement to Smartmatic. That sum was undisclosed, but you can imagine it was a large sum. And Fox had to pay nearly $1 billion to Dominion because there weren't any facts to back this up. So knowing that there were no facts to back up this same exact lie before gives you, as the publisher of the lie, by her going on to this interview, enough of a heads up, let's say, that she had a duty to look into whether or not that lie was true or false. And we know she didn't look into that lie as true or false because she says it in the interview. She says, "Oh, I just got this information. I haven't yet talked to a county election person." Well, that doesn't give you the right to go ahead and continue to publish the lie. There is no urgency in publishing the lie. You have a responsibility to see, because the standard is whether or not you knowingly, because if it's a public official or a public issue like these voting machines are, defamation includes not only saying a false statement of fact, but having malice. And having malice is knowing that you lied or having a reckless disregard for the truth. It is a reckless disregard for the truth, knowing that these were lies in the past and you have no reason to believe that it's not still a lie, and then you didn't even bother to fact check it. It would have been very easy to fact check it. And that's the other thing that would hurt her in a defamation suit against her, because she says that this person tried to vote for her and couldn't, which means this is actually in her own district that this evidently happened. Her staff could very easily have called and said, "There seems to be a serious issue with our voting here. Let us know what's happening." Election officials, if this were to have occurred, would have had to keep evidence of it. That's the other thing too. We have things in our country. Not only do we have impartial county officials, for the most part, a lot of MAGA officials are trying to get into our election officials, but for the most part, these election officials are nonpartisan, and they have to keep track of things like this, certainly like this. If something like this happened, they have to keep track of it because they would know that this would be part of a lawsuit. We have poll observers from the Democratic Party, from the Republican Party, sometimes from independent parties, who are right there in the precinct, and they're watching for things that go wrong, for people who can't vote to get turned away, machines that are broken, lines that are going too long, and they end up reporting things to their party to kind of make sure that everything is going well and there's nothing that should become a basis of a lawsuit. So I'm certainly telling you, if there was a voter there who is having her vote switched repeatedly, as Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, one of those poll observers would have found out about this. This already would be reported to up the chain and probably a lawsuit already filed. But the fact is, none of this happened. This was just a social media post that she's talking about, and she's deciding to then continue the lie on air. And it's her continuing the lie on air. It's a reckless disregard for the truth. She didn't bother to do any of her own due diligence on it. Pick up a phone call. Is there something that's going on in this precinct? No lawsuits have been filed about it. Evidently, nobody else in her party knows about it, because otherwise we would be hearing about that too. So this is a lie and a conspiracy theory that Marjorie Taylor Greene is out there talking about. So Dominion, you can go ahead and try to already put an injunction out on her, stop her from talking about it if there's no basis in fact, which does not appear to be, because otherwise she would be backing it up with more than just a social media post. And in that interview, she also talks about Georgia changing the law. And Georgia is right now one of the most contested states in terms of the certification of the vote. Thankfully, this week, though, 2 different Georgia judges made rulings protecting the certification of the vote. One of them, Judge McBurney, said that they have to certify the vote by the deadline that's in the code. If they think there's some sort of fraud, you can then contest that certification through the courts, but it first has to be certified. That's very important, because if they didn't have to certify by that deadline, it's possible Georgia may not have submitted their votes to the national, Congress certification, and this whole thing would have become chaos. So Judge McBurney saying they have to at least certify by the deadline. If you need to contest it in the courts, that's how we do it here in Georgia. And another judge, Judge Cox, saying all 7 new rules that the Georgia Election Board, now a majority MAGA election deniers, push through these 7 new rules, including requiring a hand count, requiring reasonable inquiry, all of these rules that the county officials were not supposed to have. They really were only supposed to make sure the math matched. You have a certain number of registered voters in that area. You have a certain number of ballots. Does that make sense? Does the tabulation make sense? Seal it, you move it on. But you don't look into the vote. If there's anything that makes you suspicious of it, you do it through the courts. And so he said those were unconstitutional. Those 7 rules were unconstitutional. So the Georgia judges really protecting the certification and the vote in Georgia. And then on the other hand, we have Marjorie Taylor Greene ready to restart this stale and debunked lie that the Dominion voting machine is changing people's votes in really the most reckless way by quoting a social media post with absolutely no check on her part, putting it out there to the extreme conspiracy theorist Alex Jones in an interview, just ready and waiting to sow doubt in this really most fundamental right that we have, this right to vote. I'll follow this and more issues about the election laws here for MeidasTouch. So be sure to free subscribe for more videos so we can keep you updated on the latest around law and politics in this very important election.
Real quick, Meta just changed their algorithm to suppress political content. Please follow our Instagram at MeidasTouch right now as we head towards 400,000 followers so you don't miss a beat.